Humans are weird. Bump.
Thank you for the reassurance,
Cuddles Round said in a hollow tone. The undulate reached out an appendage absently and patted the inspector's elbow. The rest of his appendages were writhing in on themselves in a display of guilt and distress that one didn't need to be an expert in xenokin aesthetics to interpret. It turned out that writhing was a pretty universal experience. Really, Medical Inspector Gregory murmured gently, reaching out to stroke the undulate. It would have been difficult for a human doctor to diagnose the trouble when the patient was actively hiding it.
But that is the flow!
Cuddles Round burst out, remembering to put sounds of stress in his voice for this time.
My species are hardly strangers to the idea of working through injuries, even to the point of self-harm. That is why the inspection of our fellows is so important to us.
Cuddles Round cut off and just writhed in the bottom of the small depression full of room-temperature water that formed his desk space, and Gregory fought the urge to look away. Every psych briefing he had stated that undulates did not do giving them privacy. Finally, the chief researcher for the expedition gathered enough self-control to continue speaking.
I know I can't be held responsible for failing to diagnose an alien injury,
Cuddles Round admitted, adding resignation to his voice.
Despite being a biologist, I know very little about mammalian biology, save where you make such excellent hosts for symbiotes. So much free space in you. Why, I bet you could host multiple eukaryotic species at once. There is in particular a worm. But I see I am distressing you. We must stay in the mainstream of conversation, of course.
Gregory didn't think his face had given away the cringing horror at the turn the conversation had taken, but it must have been his pheromones, he mused, as Cuddles Round went on.
My current is this,
Cuddles Round was saying.
Internal injuries are so odd, difficult to diagnose when your tissues are properly ordered, impossible to diagnose when they are all separated into discrete organs? I know I could never have hoped to tell that human friend Michael had sustained damage to...
Cuddles Round drifted off and lifted up his longest appendage to Medical Inspector Gregory. Gregory caught his drift and glanced down at his notes. The connective tissue, called ligaments, anchoring certain muscle groups to his pelvis, Medical Inspector Gregory supplied.
To his ligaments, Cuddles Round said, from simply slipping into the mud. In fact, I thought I witnessed the fall that caused the damage. I did not recognize that such a fall, one he even maintained control over, could damage his tissues.
Cuddles Round contracted tightly and then visibly forced himself to flex out and relax in a decent approximation of a sigh for a species with no lungs.
No, Cuddles Round said in a glum tone, I could not have diagnosed him. But he was in pain for months before the damage accumulated to the point that he could no longer walk without visible pain.
Cuddles Round stopped talking here, and Medical Inspector Gregory realized that, after a long pause, that the undulate had finished his thought and was waiting for a reply. Then, what do you feel so guilty about? Medical Inspector Gregory said. Ranger Michael slipped in the mud, sprained his butt, and didn't tell anyone. That's hardly your responsibility.
Oh, but it is, Cuddles Round insisted. I failed to set the flow of our group down the proper currents. If I had, human friend Michael would have let us know about his injury soon enough to treat it properly.
Medical Inspector Gregory couldn't help letting out a skeptical noise at that, and apparently Cuddles Round had enough experience with humans to translate it.
What do you find issue with in my statement, Medical Inspector Gregory? Cuddles Round asked.
I sincerely doubt that you could have done anything that would make it more likely for a human to have reported an injury, Gregory said. From the sound of this, he held up the report, the pain was only sporadic at first. I doubt Ranger Michael was deliberately hiding anything from you. More likely he just genuinely didn't consider it an issue at first, and there is only so much you can do before you start violating human privacy boundaries. Cuddles Round gave a skeptical sound of his own, and Gregory smiled ruefully down at the undulate. Look, Gregory said, from our perspective, this is a matter of Ranger Michael's training. However, if you would like, I can offer you and the other undulates on base information on how to coax injury information out of humans in casual conversation without passing those boundaries.
Yes,
Cuddles Round exclaimed, lifting his leading end out of the water entirely. Teach us that. Well, Gregory said with a nod. I have a whole class on it, but the main idea is tit for tat.
You mean I would have to offer up an injury of my own?
Cuddles Round asked. You get the basic idea, Gregory said hastily, the image of an earnest ungulate deliberately spraining something in the interest of cross-species communication popping into his head. But it is a story of an injury that you need to offer up. And the more of you telling stories, the more likely the human is to offer up a story of their own.
That is a natural flow,
the ungulate observed. Yeah, Gregory said with a laugh. Even before I specialized in the medical field, it seems like every long conversation I had with my friends ended up turning to what traumatic injuries we had gotten. You just have to remember to direct the conversation to current injuries without making it obvious. Humans Are Weird, I Did the Math, available on Indiegogo, February and March of 2026. If you want more absurd humans and befuddled aliens, get your copy now!